It's always painful to move on from a player in Dynasty, especially if you have deep rosters where you draft a rookie and you say, you know what? I don't really care what he does his rookie season. I don't really care what he does year two. I'm going to be holding on to him for a long time, and then I'm going to cut bait in year 4, in year 5, which is what I used to do. I used to hold on to our guys way too long, where now I'm willing to look at some of these rookies. I'm willing to look at some of these year 2 players and say, it's time to cut bait. It's not happening. Let's go find a better option off the waiver wire, better option at the end of your Dynasty startup draft. Guys that we discussed earlier on, such as Tyquan Thornton, David Bell. Hell, I'll still have some hope for those players, but these, no. Before we get into exactly who you should be cutting, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, and if you want to check out any of these player props this weekend or any week, if you want to get into a draft with us on the live stream, make sure you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. You can find the link in the description of this video. You can find the link in the comment section. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100, and with the minimum of a $10 deposit, you are also going to get our 2023 Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings, which I am very excited to get you all that. One last thing, January 14th, Fantasy Flock Network meetup, Austin, Texas, 2 p.m., Zilker Park. I better see you there. Now, let's go into our first player, which is Khalil Shakir here. And yes, this is a player you just drafted in the 3rd round and the 4th round of your Dynasty rookie draft last season. He was drafted in the 5th round of the NFL draft to arguably the best situation you could find yourself in. You go to the Buffalo Bills, where we know there's going to be a crazy amount of passing volume, where while, yes, they signed Jamison Crowder, they re-signed Isaiah McKenzie, it's not like they have a guaranteed number 3 wide receiver on this roster, and there's an outside chance that Khalil Shakir may be able to vault over those names and end up being the wide receiver 3 beside Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. Now, if that was going to be the case, if that happened, yeah, you should be pretty excited about the situation and the player as well, because he was actually dominant in college. This was one of those guys that is a typical small school 4-year player where, yeah, he doesn't break out till his junior season, but he breaks out his junior year. He dominates his final season at Boise State, then ends up being a day 3 draft pick. And we've seen players with this profile end up finding success at the NFL level, but 9 times out of 10, if that guy doesn't break out until his junior season at a small school in college, it's not going to happen. No matter how good he was at 22 years old, his final season in college, 9 times out of 10, he had just been around a lot longer than everybody else there. And yes, you can dominate when you're playing at a school like Boise State. When you get to the NFL, it will be significantly harder. And what I am I want to say annoyed with for the teams where we drafted him is, you had Jamison Crowder really falling out of favor with this coaching staff. Jamison Crowder fell out of favor, then gets injured. Crowder is entirely removed from this situation, whereas the only other guy you could look at would be Isaiah McKenzie. And Isaiah McKenzie came in and he was 100% the wide receiver 3 in this offense. He ends up with 423 receiving yards. You have Shakir down there at 161. You actually have Shakir behind James Cook, behind Devin Singletary, behind Dawson Knox. He was the 7th player in this offense in receiving. And if we're looking towards the future, I don't see it getting much better, because I don't believe this coaching staff loves him, given the fact they decided to bring Cole Beasley in here at the very end of the season, just indicating what they think about their wide receiver depth. And they also have Stephon Diggs, Isaiah McKenzie, and Gabriel Davis all still under contract next season. So if you have all 3 of those guys still under contract, and the coaching staff has demonstrated that they don't believe in the wide receiver depth, this was a long shot prospect to begin with, I'm ready to cut ties. And now our next guy is actually someone that I drafted a ton on Underdog this past year. It's really the only Denver Bronco I was drafting, and it did not work out. KJ Hamler. I mean, with KJ Hamler, I've always loved the guy. I mean, coming out of Penn State, I really liked the profile. He broke out as a true sophomore. He was in that Penn State offense in 2019, in 2018, when you had some other top talents there. You had Jahan Dotson. You had Pat Frymuth. You have, Saquon Barkley there for a small stretch of games. So KJ Hamler had decent competition in college, yet he was still able to break out as a true sophomore. He was still dominant, or at least as dominant as you can be when you're playing alongside those top level talents whenever he had the opportunity. And he was an elite level athlete. He actually ends up running a 4.27 at his pro day, which doesn't translate a ton at wide receiver, of course, but still we thought this would be able to be the number one thing that got him on the field and got him the opportunity to produce early on in Denver. Well, it's been a few years now. He was drafted back in 2020. It's not happening, okay? I'm willing to throw in the towel, even though he's only 23 years old. If you're looking at what just happened this past year, while yeah, KJ Hamler gets hurt, he still played 7 games. And in those 7 games, you only had 23 receiving yards per game. And honestly, about the best thing that could have happened did happen for KJ Hamler this offseason, and that Tim Patrick went down with the torn ACL. So it was, in my opinion, a make or break year for KJ Hamler, and that this next season, you have Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Jerry Jeudy all guaranteed under contract. You most likely have very bad quarterback play. So now we're looking at him saying, I like the prospect, but you're the guaranteed wide receiver 4 in a bad offense, and you weren't able to do anything when one of the wide receivers ahead of you missed the entire season. I'm ready to cut him. Now, our next guy is someone that we never really liked, Jalen Tolbert. Jalen Tolbert, very similar to Khalil Shakir, in my opinion. Yes, he was dominant, and yes, the metrics nerd. But if we were looking at this, the number one red flag that you have is very similar to Khalil Shakir. This is a player that goes to a very small school, South Alabama, and does not break out until he is a junior. Now, yes, you can go to a small school, and you can be productive at the NFL level. Look at Cooper Kupp. But the thing is, if you go to that small school and you're playing against some of the worst competition you're ever going to find, what do we need to see? We need to see the ability to be dominant at 18 years old. I want to see you at least be dominant by the time you're a sophomore. That didn't happen with Jalen Tolbert. He was laughably bad his rookie season. I have no idea how we could ever say he recovers from this. Here are players that had more receiving yards in this offense. CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Noah Brown, Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard, Jake Ferguson, T.Y. Hilton, Peyton Hendershot, Ezekiel Elliott, Malik Davis, Simi Fehiko, Dennis Houston, and then Jalen Tolbert. It's not happening. He had a massive red flag on his prospect profile, and this is just the worst rookie season of all time. You have Gallup and CeeDee Lamb both under contract next year, of course. Now, our next guy, a second-round pick in the 2021 NFL draft class, and he was actually probably the number one reason I wasn't a fan of Sky Moore this past year, and that Dwayne Eskridge was more productive than Sky Moore back in 2020 at Western Michigan. That's why we were off of Sky Moore initially last offseason, and with Dwayne Eskridge, he was not really an exciting player's rookie year, but maybe he could have done something year 2. This was a pretty good Seattle Seahawks offense, all things considered. He did nothing. This is a player that played 10 games. You had the opportunity. Tyler Lockett missed, a small amount of time. But Marquise Goodwin clearly played over Dwayne Eskridge. Now, of course, I want to say Hooker Morris, Marquise Goodwin's the man, but no. Marquise Goodwin's a 32-year-old field-stretching wide receiver. You had Dwayne Eskridge, very similar to Jalen Tolbert, at the very bottom of this target totem pole. You had Metcalf, Lockett, Noah Fant, Marquise Goodwin, Will Dissly, Colby Parkinson, Kenneth Walker, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, all ahead of Dwayne Eskridge in receiving yards. You had 3 running backs and 3 tight ends. It's not happening. You still have Lockett. You still have Metcalf under contract next year as well. Now, our next guy, Mecole Hardman. We've wasted best ball picks on him back-to-back seasons now. With Mecole Hardman, he kind of had a shot. Marquez Valdes-Scantling didn't really do anything. Juju Smith-Schuster didn't dominate, but still, he wasn't able to stay healthy. And the number one thing that tells me that Mecole Hardman's just not happening here is the first chance that the Kansas City Chiefs had to add depth to this wide receiver room, they took. The second they could trade for Kadarius Toney, they did it. If you think about where the Chiefs sat just, I want to say about 10 months ago, this was a wide receiver room that Mecole Hardman was the only guy. He was the only guy. And what did Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs do? They signed MVS, Juju Smith-Schuster, drafted Sky Moore in the second round, and then traded a second-round pick for Kadarius Toney. So this team doesn't believe in him. This was year 3. I mean, the man was drafted back in 2019. So I'm sorry. It's time to cut bait with Mecole Hardman. Now we're going to go over to the Rams. There are 3 players that I'm done with. Okay. Tutu Atwell, Van Jefferson, and Allen Robinson. First off, with Tutu Atwell, I don't think it's going to take too much convincing for me to say, hey, it's probably time to let him go. Played 13 games, didn't have 300 receiving yards. So a wide receiver that was drafted in the second round in 2021. The reason he was drafted in the second round at that time was almost strictly due to his speed. Now with Atwell, he was actually very productive at Louisville. The number one issue that he had on his prospect profile was the fact that the man only weighed 155 pounds. Massive red flag, has not been able to overcome it. I mean, Van Jefferson, another second round draft pick. This was a pick in 2020, however, another player that was selected due to his speed. I mean, he ran a 4.39 40-yard dash. I mean, Van Jefferson, just a speedster that had a few plays. I mean, the man didn't have 400 receiving yards. I understand that he dealt with an injury coming into the year, but still, Allen Robinson, our last guy, Allen Robinson just has no excuses. You know, immediately after week 1 that Allen Robinson was just complete toast. Now, I still believe in this Rams team going forward. Like, I think that the Rams will be in a bounce back spot next season, but we need to keep in mind that you're going to get Cooper Kupp back in. And the number one thing, the number one reason why I'm willing to say Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson, and Tutu Atwell, it's not happening here, is the Ben Skowronek production. Ben freaking Skowronek was ahead of every single one of those wide receivers this season. What the hell? I mean, next year, every single one of these guys is under contract. I expect Cooper Kupp to get 35% of the production in this offense, which I know sounds crazy. It sounds like college numbers, but that's who Cooper Kupp is, and they're all going to be just getting peanuts compared to him. Now, our last guy will be very brief. Dyami Brown, not happening. You should have known this. The second they drafted John Dotson in the first round, they re-signed Terry McLaurin. And obviously, Curtis Samuel looked fine this past year. Dyami Brown had small chances to get on the field. Didn't really happen. This was a wide receiver that was supposed to be a deep threat, but he was slow at the NFL Combine. So we knew right away that Dyami Brown was not someone that you were too excited about, even though he goes in the third round of the NFL draft. Just not going to be anybody. Now, I think that's all I got for you. Of course, if you want to check out any of these player props on Underdog Fantasy, you can find the link in the comment section in the description. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $200. And with a minimum of a $10 deposit, you are going to get our 2023 Dynasty rankings. So make sure you take advantage of that. And also, if you enjoy the video, make sure you go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty. I better see you at the Fantasy Vlog Network meetup this Saturday in Austin, Texas. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day, and I'll be good to see you with the video tomorrow.